An educator says, Dr. Medina, I don't believe in all that translanguaging stuff. I already know that there is a misinformation, miscommunication, misunderstanding around translanguaging, because when that educator tells me that they don't believe in that translanguaging stuff, they're actually translanguaging. Porque hay mucha gente that still are having a hard time wrapping their mind around what is this translanguaging concept that is so important, specifically when serving culturally and linguistically diverse student communities. So just as a reminder, all of us translanguage, because translanguaging simply means that we are going to be mobilizing linguistic features from our one linguistic repertoire. And some of you that are fabulous and monolingual, you have a linguistic repertoire that only has one nation language represented. That could be English. And so you are going to translanguage, you're going to move linguistic features from that one linguistic repertoire, but you will solely move English linguistic features based on the context. For those of you that are bilingual or multilingual, you also have only one linguistic repertoire. But within that one linguistic repertoire, you may have 2 or 3 or 4 nation languages that are represented. And so you too will move linguistic features from that one linguistic repertoire, but you have more options because you have more nation languages to mobilize depending on the context. That is all that translanguaging is. The reason that it's so important specifically in a U.S. educational context is that for those students that language more readily in English, from the time that they walk into the U.S. classroom, they're able to use 100% of their linguistic repertoire, because in U.S. classrooms, what we value most is English. And so kids that languaged additional languages, not English, immediately walk into the classroom and they're told in English only. Don't leverage the other language because it is not worthy. And so those kids use less than 50% of their linguistic repertoire. And even in transitional bilingual and dual language programs, we still do it because we'll tell kids, en este momento solamente estás hablando español, which indeed tells kids you can only use less than 50% of your linguistic repertoire. Or right now, this is English time. We don't speak Spanish during English time. Really? Linguistic oppressor? Because once again, we're telling kids that they are only able to leverage less than 50% of their linguistic repertoire. And so instead of doing that in a non-dual language setting, we can tell students, leverage your entire language bubble. We're going to help you make connections to the language of your heart. Or in dual language settings, we can say, at this moment, we are focusing on English with connections to Spanish. Or right now, we're mobilizing Spanish with connections to English. But we never want to linguistically oppress the students and tell them that they cannot leverage their entire linguistic repertoire. The other thing that's key is that within your one linguistic repertoire, there is no hierarchy. And so when I say pos within my one linguistic repertoire, because the context is talking to my ama or my apa, pos is as correct as if I mobilized pues. Or if I say sup is as correct as how do you do? Because it really is just dependent on the context. Spanglish is not translanguaging. Spanglish is one out of an infinite number of ways to move language. And so if I say parquear, that is as gorgeous and as correct as estacionar or to park. Translanguaging, moving from your one linguistic repertoire, those specific linguistic features that you need at that moment and within that context. Adios.